The habits you believe are entirely harmless may in fact be the quiet forces steadily eroding your peace, your vitality, and your sense of connection to everything alive within you. The unsettling truth is that you repeat many of them every single day without conscious awareness, as if they are part of your natural rhythm, when in reality they may be shaping your inner state in ways you rarely examine. There is a growing modern conversation around what people call vibration. Many speak about raising it, protecting it, or shielding it, as though it were something fragile like a flame exposed to strong wind. Although the language feels contemporary, the idea itself is far older than modern discourse. Across history, various wisdom traditions have pointed toward a similar understanding. From the ancient seers of India to Taoist sages in China and mystical schools in medieval Europe, there has been a shared recognition that human beings are not merely physical structures operating mechanically. Science today is only beginning to circle around similar ideas in different language. You are not simply a physical body constructed from matter. You are not just biological machinery that somehow developed awareness. You are closer to a living field of energy, a pattern of frequency, something more like a continuously unfolding expression of consciousness. In that sense, your life is not static but dynamic, like a form of ongoing music being shaped in real time through your attention, emotions, and inner state. Just like music, this inner expression can be harmonious and clear, or it can drift into disharmony, tension, and distortion, without you noticing when the shift happened. Most people, when attempting to improve their lives, tend to think in terms of addition. They search for something new to bring in, a new routine, a new discipline, a new philosophy, a new method. While this approach has value, there is something even more powerful that is often ignored, which is subtraction. Because no matter how much you attempt to fill your life, if there are leaks in your foundation, nothing truly accumulates. If there is a constant drain beneath the surface, you cannot meaningfully rise until you address what is causing the loss. Before real transformation becomes possible, it is necessary to recognize what is quietly pulling you downward. Many of the influences shaping your state are not dramatic or obvious. They are subtle, ordinary, and deeply normalized. They blend into everyday behavior so seamlessly that they are rarely questioned. Yet these patterns repeatedly influence how you feel, how you think, and how you experience life itself. The most damaging habits are almost never the extreme or visible ones. People rarely confuse obvious destructive behavior with well-being. Instead, what tends to affect human consciousness most deeply are the socially accepted, ordinary patterns that feel completely reasonable. They are shared by those around you, repeated without hesitation, and often even encouraged. Because they appear normal, they escape scrutiny. Over time, they become invisible structures, shaping your internal world. Human existence is not a fixed condition, but a wide spectrum. At one end are states dominated by confusion, anger, and contraction. At the other end are states marked by clarity, compassion, and deep awareness. Most people move continuously across this range without realizing how significantly their daily habits influence their position. It is not a permanent identity, but a shifting condition shaped by repetition and attention. What you do habitually without reflection becomes the architecture of your inner life. Imagine a clear mountain river, flowing rapidly with freshness and light. Now imagine small amounts of mud being thrown into it repeatedly. Each individual portion seems insignificant at first, barely noticeable. Yet over time, the accumulation begins to change the entire character of the water. It becomes heavier, darker, less alive. This is how subtle habits function in human experience. They rarely transform things instantly, but they shape direction through repetition. In this metaphor, your awareness is the river, and certain unconscious patterns act like sediment, slowly altering its clarity. One of the oldest and most widespread human behaviors is speaking about others who are not present. Gossip often feels harmless, even socially bonding. There is a sense of inclusion in sharing information about others, a feeling of closeness in the exchange. It can create temporary warmth or amusement, making it seem like a normal part of interaction. However, beneath that surface, something more subtle is occurring within the mind. Each time attention is directed toward the flaws, mistakes, or difficulties of others, mental energy is invested in lives that are not your own. Attention, which is one of your most valuable internal resources, becomes scattered outward. Emotional tones such as judgment, comparison, or subtle superiority often accompany these exchanges. These emotional states are not neutral. They shape your internal atmosphere. After such conversations, there is often a noticeable shift in feeling, a sense of subtle depletion rather than clarity. The alternative is not moral superiority or forced restraint. It is simply redirection. Instead of feeding attention into the lives of others in this way, the focus can gently return to your own direction. Questions like what you are creating, what you are developing, or what you are becoming immediately bring energy back into alignment with your own life trajectory. This shift alone can change the quality of inner experience significantly. Another deeply ingrained pattern in modern life is the constant addiction to noise. From the moment many people wake up, sound fills the environment. There is rarely a true gap without stimulation. Conversations, devices, notifications, background media, and continuous engagement with information create an almost uninterrupted stream of auditory and mental activity. Even in moments of physical stillness, the mind often seeks additional input to avoid emptiness. Silence, in contrast, is often avoided, not because it is harmful, but because it brings attention inward. In silence, external distractions fade and a person is left in direct contact with their own inner world. For many, this becomes uncomfortable, not because silence itself is threatening, but because what it reveals is unfamiliar. Without external noise, thoughts and emotions become more noticeable, and that can feel confronting. Yet silence is not emptiness in the way it is often assumed to be. It is more accurately a space of emergence. Creativity, insight, and genuine understanding often arise not from stimulation, but from its absence. When external input decreases, perception deepens. Many profound realizations throughout human history have emerged not in moments of overload, but in moments of quiet receptivity. Silence allows the deeper layers of awareness to become audible in a subtle sense. Practicing silence does not require complex methods. It involves simply sitting without distraction and allowing whatever arises within to appear without interference. Initially, this can feel uncomfortable as the mind resists stillness, but over time, something begins to settle. Mental noise loses intensity, and a clearer sense of presence gradually emerges. It is not about achieving a special state, but about returning to a more fundamental one beneath habitual distraction. Another pattern that quietly affects inner well-being is resentment. Holding on to past pain often feels justified, as though releasing it would diminish the significance of what occurred. There is a sense that remembering harm preserves a form of emotional truth or accountability. However, the reality is that holding on to resentment does not affect the past or the person who caused harm. It primarily affects the one who carries it. Those who are the focus of resentment are often unaffected in their daily lives. They continue forward, detached from the emotional burden being carried elsewhere. Meanwhile, the person holding on to the memory may repeatedly relive the emotional residue of an event long gone. This ongoing internal replay creates physiological and psychological strain that accumulates over time. Letting go of resentment is not about excusing what happened. It is about recognizing where your attention and energy are going and whether that direction continues to serve your present life. Releasing it does not erase history, but it frees your present from being continuously shaped by it. It ended long ago. You are, in the most literal physiological sense, reliving your most painful memories on a loop and calling it fairness or justice. In reality, forgiveness is not a favor extended to the person who caused harm. It is a release you offer to yourself. It is the conscious decision that you are no longer willing to let a past moment occupy and govern your present awareness. This is not weakness in any form. It is one of the most profound expressions of self-respect a human being can embody. Pay attention for a moment to the inner dialogue running through your mind, not the polished thoughts you present in conversation, but the continuous background commentary that activates when you make an error, when you see your reflection, or when you compare your current state to an imagined version of where you thought you should be. For many individuals, this internal voice is surprisingly harsh. It says things that, if directed at another person, would immediately damage the relationship. You are not enough. You are too much. You are behind. You are damaged. You should have achieved more by now. And yet the deep irony is that this voice is mistaken for truth. It feels like objective reality delivered without emotion, but it is not truth at all. It is repetition. It is conditioning formed from countless external criticisms absorbed over time. It is inherited emotional residue mistaken for self-understanding. The real practice, and it is indeed a practice that develops gradually, is to observe this voice without obedience, to notice it in the same way you might notice distant weather patterns outside a window. It exists, but it is not identical with you. Over time, you begin to replace that internal tone with a different form of communication directed toward yourself, one that is not based on artificial praise, but on patience, clarity, and steady encouragement. There is also another habit that appears so ordinary it almost escapes notice entirely: neglect of the body. Many live as though the body is simply a transport mechanism for the mind, a device that carries awareness from one task to another. But the body is not separate from consciousness. It is consciousness expressed in physical form. When it is deprived of sleep, when it is continuously overstimulated or undernourished, when it is forced into long hours of inactivity under artificial conditions, it is not just the body that suffers. Sleep is not optional maintenance. It is foundational restoration. Movement is not punishment or aesthetic correction. It is a natural expression of being alive. Food is not merely fuel, but information that the body interprets constantly. When these elements are ignored or treated mechanically, the result is not just fatigue, but a subtle disconnection from vitality itself. The shift required is simple in concept, though not always easy in execution. Sleep as though it carries significance, because it does. Move regularly, not as obligation, but as expression. Eat with awareness of what supports life rather than what merely fills space. These are not superficial lifestyle adjustments. They are adjustments in the quality of lived experience. At this point, it becomes important to emphasize something even more crucial than all of these observations combined. There is a strong tendency, when encountering ideas like this, to turn them into another system of self-judgment. The mind quickly begins to measure, compare, and conclude that one is failing yet again, that one is still behind, that improvement should have already happened. This reaction is subtle but powerful, and if followed unconsciously, it becomes just another form of internal pressure. When self-observation turns into self-attack, it simply creates another layer of the same problem. The process of transformation does not arise from internal violence or shame. It begins with awareness, not the cold, critical awareness of judgment, but the open and curious awareness of observation, the kind that simply notices patterns without immediately condemning them. There is a significant difference between saying "I am wrong" and saying "this is happening again." One closes possibility, the other opens inquiry. When behavior is observed without hostility, it begins to lose its unconscious grip. Clarity itself becomes the catalyst for change. Over time, even small adjustments made consistently within awareness create transformations that appear remarkable from the outside. Not because something magical has occurred, but because accumulated unconscious patterns have been interrupted by conscious attention. Sustained clarity always reorganizes behavior naturally. There is no requirement for perfection in this process. What is needed is presence. Presence to what is occurring internally. Presence to how it feels in real time. Presence to the small moments in which a different response could naturally emerge. These moments are always available, though often overlooked. Real elevation of inner state is not found in external symbolism or curated practices designed for appearance. It is found in subtle decisions repeated quietly when no one is watching. A slightly different response, a slightly more conscious pause, a slightly gentler internal tone. Over time, these adjustments accumulate into a fundamentally different way of being. When examining the patterns discussed, such as habitual gossip, constant comparison, lingering resentment, internal self-criticism, and neglect of physical well-being, it becomes clear that none of them are rare or extreme. They are ordinary aspects of human behavior. Their power lies not in their intensity, but in their invisibility. They operate beneath conscious attention, and therefore shape experience continuously. The moment these patterns are brought into awareness without judgment, something begins to shift, not suddenly, but steadily. The internal landscape starts to clear in the same way muddy water gradually becomes transparent when disturbance stops being added. Underneath these accumulated patterns, there remains a natural state of clarity, ease, and aliveness. It is not something new to be created, but something already present beneath the surface activity of the mind. It does not disappear, it becomes obscured. And when the obscuring patterns are no longer reinforced, that clarity begins to reappear on its own.